This is a sports catastrophe production. Hey there, hello, ho there. It's Jeff Carter. Welcome you to another sports catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for today, October the 16th, is a man who was a great hockey player who actually brought Asians into hockey, which usually never happened. But anyway, he's 47 years old today, and he is Paul Kariya, who played 15 years in the NHL for Anaheim, Colorado, Nashville, and St. Louis. He was a very decent player and all that. His number 9's retired by the Ducks, and he was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2017. So anyway, Kariya was born in Vancouver to his parents, Sharon and Tatsuhiko. What was weird about his dad was that he was a Japanese Canadian who was actually born in a concentration camp, because concentration camps were not just for the Jews, they were for Japanese Americans / Japanese Canadians on the West Coast, because they think that they would be spies in Japan's war against America. His father died in 2002. Kariya's mother, who was Scottish Canadian, was also a teacher. So Paul was one of 4 siblings who played professional sports. His brother Steve and Martin also were hockey players, and I believe Steve played in the NHL for a little bit, but his sister Noriko would turn to boxing. Anyway, he played for Penticton in the junior A team, and then he would actually enroll a couple years later at the University of Maine to join the school's hockey team. So that's amazing. So Kariya also had received offers from Boston University and Harvard, who are big-name U.S. college programs for hockey. And he actually turned down major junior teams. Victoria had his rights to the WHL, but they traded his rights to the Tri-City Americans, a team out of Washington State. But anyway, Kariya would be a huge part of University of Maine's dominance. In his first year, Kariya scored 100 points in 39 games, which was great. He was the player of the year for Hockey East, alongside the Rookie of the Year, becoming the first person to get those 2 trophies since Brian Leach for Boston College back in '87. Maine was dominant. They were 42-1-2 during the 92-93 season, and they almost choked the final against Lake Superior State, but Kariya put up 3 assists in the third period to get Maine the win 5-4. He was a top prospect. A lot of people were thinking, where would he land in the draft? They had him either 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th in the draft. Everyone figured the number 1 pick automatically would have been Oct16. Well, that was a giant mistake. The Senators took him with the first pick. Hartford ended up getting San Jose's pick, as San Jose and Hartford switched first-round picks. San Jose was given the 2nd slot because of how putrid they were in the 92-93 season. But the Hartford Whalers made a trade and picked up the pick from San Jose and took Chris Pronger from Peterborough. Tampa was next at number 3, and they decided to take Chris Gradden from Kingston of the OHL. Anaheim was next on the clock. They were going to be a new expansion team alongside the Florida Panthers. So Anaheim went to work and picked up Paul Kariya. Florida would get Rob Niedermeyer, 5th overall. Not a bad compensation. Not bad compensation. And with the Hartford pick that San Jose traded their 2nd overall pick, the Sharks took Victor Kozlov, who played a few good years for San Jose, but then went to Florida and became a Panthers icon. So, not too bad. Tampa could have used Paul Kariya, but Chris Gradden was a decent player for Tampa, so you can't blame Tampa. You could kind of blame Hartford for not going with Paul Kariya, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So, in fact, he was picked 4th overall. In fact, he was the 2nd highest pick from the city of Vancouver, living in Vancouver. That was Barry Beck in 1977, being 2nd overall. But anyway, Kariya returned to Maine for a sophomore year as team captain. Kariya was the lone captain, as his teammate Chris Imes, who he would switch with the captaincy, was going to be part of the U.S. team in the '94 Winter Olympics. Kariya was committed to the Canadian national team in preparation for the 94 Winter Olympics. And following the Olympics, Kariya decided not to go back to Maine, saying that he would like to be professional with the Ducks. Maine would retire his number 9 in 2001. So he wanted to join the Ducks for the remainder of the 93-94 NHL season after the Olympics, but a deal failed. Kariya wanted a 5-year, $12 million contract. Kariya would sign a 3-year, $6.5 million contract before the 94-95 season, and of course, you know, that was shortened because of the strike. Kariya would make his NHL debut against the Edmonton Oilers. His first ever goal was scored against Winnipeg and their goalie, Tim Shovelday. Ducks won the game 4-3. He would play with Stefan Lebeau and Sean Van Allen on the line. And it looked good. He was the top rookie goal scorer for a while. But then Peter Forsberg just went nuts. Forsberg's job was good. Forsberg ended up winning the Rookie of the Year, taking Kariya out. Kariya was named to the NHL rookie team. Kariya looked good. And with Teemu Selanne picked up by the Ducks from Winnipeg, it was figured that Anaheim was pushing for a spot. So with that Selanne trade, Anaheim made with Winnipeg, Anaheim was aiming for a playoff spot. They ended up 9th. Guess who ended up 8th? Winnipeg, of all teams. But anyway, Kariya was actually captain of the Ducks starting in 95-96. Yeah, he was the third captain in team history after René Ladouceur and Troy Loney. So anyway, the rumor was Anaheim wanted Wayne Gretzky, but they failed. But they got Jari Kurri, so it wasn't that bad. Kurri did okay. So Kariya did quite well in the 97 season. So anyway, he was a hero. And Kariya had a problem. He held out. He wanted a better contract. He wanted a 3-year, $27 million contract, which meant $9 million a year. The Ducks countered with a 5-year, $25 million contract. But both sides would agree to a 2-year, $14 million deal in 97. And in December, he came back to the NHL, thankfully enough. And Kariya was ready to go. Back from the holdout, trying to get the Ducks fans to be on his side, and also trying to help hone his skills so that he'd be ready for the 98 Winter Olympics for Team Canada. Ironically, in Japan, the birthplace of his family. Worst of all for Kariya was that because of his contract impasse, he wasn't playing for the Ducks when they were facing Vancouver in the 2-game season opener in Tokyo. So that was kind of stupid. But anyway, with several weeks left, Kariya would get a concussion thanks to a cross-check to the face from Gary Sutter of the Chicago Blackhawks, who ironically was on the United States national team. Kariya had scored a goal and was standing still at the side when Sutter hit him. He only got a 4-game suspension. And a lot of people said that Gary Sutter did that on purpose to prevent Kariya from playing for Canada at the Olympics. Sutter and Chris Challis were both members of the U.S. national team. And a lot of people said Sutter was accused of intentionally injuring Wayne Gretzky when Canada faced the Americans in the 91 Canada Cup, trying to help the Americans out. But sadly, though, if that was the plan, it failed miserably because Canada won the Canada Cup. It was a massive cheap shot and all that. So anyway, Sutter had a lot of problems dealing with the angry NHL fans. Kariya would have post-concussion syndrome, and he got himself a better helmet. So Kariya was still playing well. His younger brother Steve played for the Vancouver Canucks, and they would face each other December 8, 1999. Steve would get an assist. And ironically enough, after Steve went to the box for penalty, Paul Kariya scored on the ensuing power play. Kariya was speared by Brian Marchment, and he got hurt by that. So a little bit of injury woes hit him. But Kariya was at his best in the 2003 playoffs when the Ducks made their improbable run to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Ducks ended up being the 7th seed in the West and would have to face the defending Stanley Cup champion Red Wings in the first round. Kariya scored the triple overtime winner in Game 1 that made a winner out of J.S. Shiger, winning the game 2-1. Kariya would score his second goal of the series to tie the game against the Red Wings in Game 4 before Steve Bruchin iced it with an overtime goal against the Red Wings, knocking the Red Wings out. In fact, it was only the second time in history that a team eliminated the defending Stanley Cup champion in a 4-game sweep. Anaheim would take care of Dallas and Minnesota in the rest of the conference playoffs to get to New Jersey in the Stanley Cup Finals. Every home team won in that series, which meant the Devils won 4-3. But what's more than that was that famous Game 6 in which Kariya got an open ice hit from Scott Stevens, who was known for his open ice hits. He lay motionless on the ice for several minutes and was helped to the dressing room. And a lot of people actually said that Kariya, when he changed his equipment after his first major concussion, it actually saved him from being rendered unconscious from the Stevens hit. But after 4.5 minutes of the game, he returned, and he scored a slap shot to give the Ducks a 4-1 lead. And few can forget the Gary Thorne call on ABC. Kariya down the wing, scores, off the floor, on the board, Paul Kariya. Kariya helped Anaheim force a Game 7. Stevens was not penalized for his hit and got no subsequently disciplinary measures. Kariya finished third on the team in playoff scoring behind Emeralds and Peter Sikora, scoring 6 goals. All that. However, Game 7, the final, marked Kariya's last game as a Duck. After 9 seasons, he left Anaheim as the team's leader in games played, goals, assists, and points. Unfortunately, the records have been surpassed, mostly by Teemu Selanne. Then he was an unrestricted free agent, and Kariya got a $10 million qualifying offer. No, he had to require a $10 million qualifying offer to remain with the team. Brian Murray, as GM, said he needed to go to free agency. So Teemu Selanne had unrestricted free agency after 3 years with San Jose. Both Selanne and Kariya approached Colorado with the chance that they could win the Stanley Cup. Colorado, of course, was off that shocking playoff loss to Minnesota and then, losing Patrick Roy to retirement. So the Avalanche decided to sign Kariya and Selanne to 1-year contracts. Kariya took a $1.2 million pay cut from his salary with the Ducks for $8.8 million. Selanne got a $5.8 million deal. And it looked good for Colorado in a sense. So, yeah. So Selanne and Kariya helped Colorado out. But Colorado lost the division to the Vancouver Canucks. So they had to qualify as the 4th seed in the West. They lost in the second round to the San Jose Sharks. Kariya was inactive for the 04-05 season because of the end of the lockout, but he had several injuries. Kariya became an unrestricted free agent in 2005. Remember, he only had 1 year deal with Colorado, so he signed a 2-year deal with the Nashville Predators, which was shocking. I mean, Nashville? Well, Kariya did produce well, 85 points in his first year with the Predators, and got them to the Stanley Cup playoffs as the 4th seed. It was good. Unfortunately, though, the Predators suffered a 5-game loss to the San Jose Sharks. Nashville tried everything to help themselves out, but Nashville just couldn't do anything. Kariya decided not to resign with Nashville because of the team's uncertain future. So he would sign a 3-year deal with the St. Louis Blues. It was amazing. St. Louis wasn't really a good team. They had slipped off the map. All that. Kariya's number 9 was given back to him because St. Louis's Jay McClellan wore number 9 but surrendered it. Kariya would have a few major injuries. Kariya was going to sit out the 2011 season because of post-concussion syndrome, but after all, he decided to retire June 2011. So Paul Kariya did very well for themselves. And, you know, he was part of the main Black Bears and was part of the 94 silver medal winning team in the Olympics. Kariya was actually the last shooter for Canada in the shootout against Sweden, but unfortunately his shot got saved by Tommy Salo. This was, of course, his shot was, of course, the one after Peter Forsberg's famous postage stamp goal. I think I talked about that. I hope I did. Kariya was part of the 94 men's hockey champions. The men's hockey championships. That won the tournament for the first time in 33 years. Kariya looked good. Kariya was going to be part of Canada's team for the World Cup of Hockey in '96, but sadly though he got hurt, so he couldn't compete. And of course he was part of the '98 Winter Olympics, or would have been if it wasn't for the freaking Gary Suter hit. Kariya did play for Canada in the 2002 Olympics, and he actually scored 3 goals and 1 assist. He scored Canada's first goal in the gold medal game against the Americans. So that was amazing. Anyway, he was known as a good player. All that. So 402 goals, 989 points in 989 games. A point a game, but he just missed the 1,000 point mark. That's so close. Kariya would score 16 goals in 46 playoff games, though, having only 1 major run. So yeah, he has some Ducks records and some Predator records, but he's the last NCAA player to score 100 points in a single season. That's amazing. So anyway, yeah. Kariya resides in California with his longtime girlfriend Valerie. I don't know if he has any kids. Kariya made a cameo in D3 The Mighty Ducks. So yeah. So I don't know if he has any kids or not. Guess not. That's kind of pathetic, don't you think? He should have a kid or 2. But that's Paul Kariya for you. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.